Hi everyone. My name's Stephen Downs. This talk is a roadmap to the future of teaching and learning. It's online Educa Berlin. That's for the audio recording, December 7, 2017. And I've got about 5 minutes with you. No, I'm just kidding. I've set my timer for 25 minutes. That will take us into lunch a bit, but if you want to leave partway through the talk, please feel free. I won't feel insulted at all. I know how important lunch is. Believe me. And other way, maybe? There we go. So there's the roadmap. Nothing confused at all. I see the future of teaching and learning as online. I love basements, but that's not the future, thank you. And it's not the future simply because in order to provide learning for 7 billion people on this planet, you have to think scale, you have to think technology, you have to go beyond the things that have been done in the past. This is a roadmap that leads us in that direction. A lot of these topics will be familiar to you. What I've done is I've gone through some of the major areas there, pulled out some things, and those are the things that I will concentrate on. Okay, timer works only if it's visible. So that's what I'm going to do. That's the plan. These slides are available at that website after, and assuming the video recording and the audio recording work properly, the audio and the video will also be available at that website. And that's part of the future of teaching and learning. We have this idea that it's a static thing, we prepare it all ahead of time, it's done in long formal increments, but the future of teaching and learning is more stuff like this, creating resources on the fly, sharing out quickly, rapidly, and of course open and free. And that's for the purpose of making education available to everyone. So let's look at that roadmap in a little bit more detail. We'll begin with authoring and publishing. Authoring and publishing is where a lot of online learning begins. Certainly it's where distance education begins. We think course packages. Those of us who've been around for a little bit think about things like learning objects. The biggest trend over the last 15, 20 years probably has been the modularization of learning content, contracting from books, contracting from full-length courses to something shorter, something more portable, something shareable, something rediscoverable. As we move forward into the next 5 and 10 years, our learning content is going to become even more fluid, even more temporary and transient. If you're in the business of producing resources for learning as though they were books or publications, you're in the wrong business. We need to think of learning resources as something that can be created today, used tomorrow, and discarded next week because it's out of date. That's the world we live in. It's kind of chaotic and hard to get used to, but that's the world. So I've highlighted 2 major trends here, open data and data books. Open data is the idea that data from the environment will be freely available, sometimes at a charge, but generally accessible to any learning environment. We're talking government data, employment data, consumer resource data, your personal data, whatever. It will be available to learning tools and devices. That also leads us to what have been called data books. I think, for example, of something called the Jupyter Notebook, where you have a book-like resource with live, actionable data embedded right in the resource, so that you read the book, you can change the code in the book and get different data, different resources, updated on the fly. If you're not looking at data books, you should be looking at data books. Learning activities. We've had a lot of talk about learning activities. There are sessions in this conference about games and gamification and things like that. virtual reality. I've been giving talks on some of this stuff for many years. I remember about 10 years ago denouncing something called Second Life at a conference in London, and the audience wanted to attack me. But who's using Second Life today? That's the reality of a lot of these immersive simulations. They take your total attention, even more than television, even more than movies. And because they do, you can't be doing anything else. And because of that, these things, while they're very powerful, are always going to be niche applications. You'll use them for a bit. You'll use them for an hour or two, or if you're like me, 3, and then you'll go back to the rest of your life. What we're going to see in the area of learning activities is more and more learning combining with the other things that you do. That's a tennis racket. You probably knew that from the picture. But that tennis racket is connected with a learning application. You can sort of see it there in the handle. It connects to, well, maybe your phone or something similar. As you practice playing tennis, the whatever you call the gizmos inside, not GPS, but the thing that measures your swing and that, they're recording your activity and sending data back into your phone, and your phone is telling you, look, you're not following through properly, or look, you need a different racket, or look, tennis isn't your sport, or something. This is a thing that they hand out at Disney. It's called a magic band, because it's Disney, right? And it tracks you as you go through Disneyland or Disney World, but it also lets you get into activities. You interact with displays and whatever. It knows who you are. Your world is your teaching device. Your world is your teaching environment. So think of learning activities not as something that you're doing in front of the computer anymore, not as something that you do in a special place or a special room. Learning is something that we're going to be doing every minute of every day. I think that's a good thing. Collaboration and social media, a lot of this stuff has come on stream already. If I wanted to and I felt confident with the bandwidth, I could be live streaming this now on Google Live or YouTube Live, or I don't know if live streams still exist, but there are other options. That's only going to get better over time. A lot of these conferences have back channels. I could have a little thing in my ear and listen to comments as we're going, or I could have a separate screen and so on. So a lot of that is really coming into the fore. The big thing that is going to happen, and I've highlighted it there, automated translation. Google's Pixel, whatever it is, phone doesn't have an earphone jack, for which they should be cursed, just like Apple, but still. The way they're selling this is earbuds that do automatic translation on the fly. Now, that's generation 0.1 of this technology. It's flaky. It's only going to get better. It's not going to get worse. So as we're going through our day, you could be speakers of Mandarin or Swahili or Urdu or whatever and not speak English at all, but still follow this talk or an online conversation because of your automated translation. That changes the game. It creates a truly global environment, not just an English world, a Chinese world, a Hindi world, etc. Resource bases and sources. This is astonishingly an almost mature technology. We can store pretty much anything online now. And we've got publication databases, course repositories, we've got app stores and things like that. The big thing, it's been a thing for a while. I'm hoping that this is a prediction and not a wish, but I'll live with it either way. Open educational resources. We're seeing now some of the major publishers finally adapting open educational resources, reluctantly dragging their fingernails on the floor, trying not to do open educational resources if they can possibly avoid it. But the thing is, we have entered the era of free content. The massive open online course, the key word there is open, and that allowed people to imagine that resources could be free and freely available around the world. The momentum there, even if you think MOOCs are dead, open online content is not dead, and I think it's only increasing. Learning environments, big changes in the wind here. The learning management system is not yet dead, and it's not yet dead only because it has a ridiculous installed base. All large companies and large institutions are using them, but the learning management system itself is beginning to change. The providers of learning management systems don't want them to be called that anymore. They want them to be called learning platforms. And the reason for this is, formerly, in a learning management system, everything took place inside the learning management system. It was a sealed box, practically. You didn't even need to be online, really. All you needed is access to your learning management system, and you were away to the races. Today, however, we're seeing more and more the idea of other things integrated into the learning management system. The model of this, of course, is things like Facebook, which is a platform, and you have these apps you can put into Facebook where you, I don't know, chase Candy Crushers or whatever, or play games that try to steal your money. Learning management systems will have more useful apps. The open data that I've just talked about will be included among those. The collaboration and communication that I've just talked about will be included among those. A technology that's now reasonably well established is learning tools interoperability. This allows your learning management system to launch an external application, and for the external application to communicate back with the learning management system in a relatively synchronized way. So think of your learning management system of the future as a platform, and then a range of different applications surrounding that learning management system. But now take that a step further. Why do only institutions get learning management systems? Why do only corporations get learning management systems? I think, and I've been saying this for a number of years, and I still don't think I'm wrong, that the future of these systems is the personal learning environment. I think that each of us will have our own personal learning platform. Our personal learning platform will access courses from multiple providers. We're already seeing the need for this. It's in the world of MOOCs and MOOC providers now. You can take a MOOC from edX, from Coursera, from wherever, but we've also got open educational resources, thousands, millions of open educational resources, along with communication tools, Mastodon, even Twitter, if you still use Twitter. All of these can be brought into your personal learning environment. Your personal learning environment can be where you do your study, your work, and share your resources with your own network of mentors, of friends, of colleagues, and even of students. So that's where I believe that's headed. All of this is supported with a framework which I'll, for lack of a better term, call aggregation and metadata, and with a nod to calendaring. I had a computer developer, software developer say, calendaring has been solved. And yeah, in a certain technical sense, calendaring has been solved, but my question is, why can't Outlook work with Google? Google Calendar. So from my perspective, not solved. So we need syndication, aggregation, and even metadata. We need these systems talking to each other. We're slowly moving in that direction. Again, The companies, the corporations, the providers, you can see their fingernails dragging on the floor as they resist the idea that you might want to use somebody else's content, somebody else's calendar. But we're moving in that direction. We are getting more integrated applications. What's pushing this? Well, it used to be RSS. Then Google did its level best to kill RSS by shutting down the feed reader and making RSS feeds invisible on the Chrome browser. But aggregation continued. It was one of the cores of our massive open online courses. Aggregation continues today in things like application programming interfaces and something called JSON, JavaScript object notation, which is the new way of sharing structured data. You may have been brought up in a world of XML and semantic web and OWL and ontologies and all of that, but what's actually being used in a lot of these applications is JSON, which is a much more free-form kind of data. If I want to create data in JSON, I just call it something. If I want to give it a property, I just name a property and then give it a value. And that's all you have to do. There's a lot of work happening in that area. I run a MOOC aggregator at mooc.ca. The MOOC providers, for the most part, make their data available in JSON. And because they're all commercial, they all use different formats because goodness knows they could never use the same format as some other provider. I'm a bit skeptical. This is leading to cloud apps and storage. You already use this, probably. If you have Google Drive, if you have OneDrive, if you have Apple's thing that takes your money called iCloud, there's BoxNet, Dropbox, etc. There's more, right? If you're storing your data on that, you're using these. Now, what's happening over time is that not just data, but applications themselves are moving into the cloud. I did a seminar yesterday called Grasshopper in a Box. Grasshopper is my prototype personal learning environment. It's got its bugs, but the big thing that I did for this seminar is I put it in something called a vagrant box. Now you might think, well, yeah, big deal, you put an insect in a box. Well, but the thing is, now that it's in a box, I can put that box in the cloud and anybody can get a copy of that box and run it wherever they want. Or if I want, I could give you each your own instances of Grasshopper just by giving your own copies of this box. And it comes out, and basically it's a completely self-contained computer that runs in a software environment. Over time, I don't have one in my pocket. Usually I have one of those USB sticks in my pocket. Over time, your computer will just be a USB stick. Your learning environment will be on that USB stick, and you just plug it in wherever you happen to be, and you have all of your learning resources, all of your performance support resources available right there. That's where this is going in the future. So I put personal cloud as the big red, this is the thing that's going to be happening. But by personal cloud, not just data, your own personal applications in the cloud, but not the sort of cloud where if you stop paying them, it goes away. The sort of cloud where you can unplug it and take it with you wherever you want and plug it in somewhere new. So I think that that's going to be pretty significant. Must be lunchtime. Competencies and skills, the corporate world is all over this. They're spending a lot of money and a lot of time, probably too much money and too much time. I'm kind of a skeptic about a lot of this because a lot of this is semantically based. It's old style artificial intelligence. It's old style expert systems kind of thinking. It's not new style neural networks, deep learning kind of thinking. So I would exercise caution before investing too much time and too much energy into competencies. That said, all of the learning management systems are doing them. The idea here is to define a competency, and that's what on the left, and then assess the learner's state of expertise in that competency, and that's what's indicated on the right with the yellow, the red, and the green. This is something from the US Advanced Distributed Learning. It's part of an overall project that they call Competencies and Skills Systems, and that's part of ADL's larger project called a Total Learning Architecture. Only the US military could call something like that. But really, the questions with competencies and assessments, I think, go to motivations. How do we accurately represent a person's knowledge? And even more to the point, what are the person's own motivations to have their skills and knowledge accurately represented as opposed to inaccurately and often falsely recommended or recognized? I think there's a big issue there, an issue that people haven't necessarily grasped yet. And I think in the long term, assessment of a person's overall competencies will resemble the way essays are automatically graded today. Not by looking for features, not by looking for specific behaviors or specific performances, but by using neural networks to compare previously successful performances, 1,000 essays that were given a grade of A, for example, with the current performance. And you get a mechanism that says, yes, this is one of those, or no, this is not one of those, based on, if you have a sufficiently detailed neural network, thousands of data points, tens of thousands of data points, rather than the simplified representation you get in the semantic web or in a competency framework. Lots of stuff to talk about there. Learning records kind of follows from semantic web, kind of doesn't. Everybody's talking about blockchain. First person that I heard talk about blockchain in education was not Don Tapscott, it was Doug Belshaw, and he's been working in badges for a long time, and he was thinking of blockchain as a mechanism for establishing the credentials of badges. I think credentials are kind of important, but I think your own personal public performance is more important. My video of this talk is a much better representation of whether I know what I'm talking about than any certificate or credential or degree or whatever could be. If you have experts in the field and they say, yeah, he knows what he's talking about, that's probably a pretty good credential. But if people look at this and they say, huh, that's nonsense, I can't get past that with a university degree. It's just not going to fly. And so I think that we need to be careful again in blockchain. Blockchain is great for verifying data, but you have to be sure that the data that's being verified was actually data that you needed and wanted. If you haven't done that, then you're spending a lot of money to verify something that you didn't really need. It's like buying a very large safe and putting a pair of cufflinks in it. Okay, bad analogy. That's what I get for making up an analogy on the fly. Analytics, again, everybody's talking analytics. Analytics, we love analytics. People have been taught, that diagram up there is from 1998. So that's how long this idea has been around. Please don't be fooled by these companies coming along and saying, we've got analytics. Nobody ever had, and it's been around for a long time. Really some basic analytics. Right now, analytics is the application of the mathematics of probability to data sets. That's all it is. And so it's used to do things like clustering. It's used to do things like entity and image recognition. It's used to do things like a little bit of projection. People who did this will probably fail. People who did that will probably pass. And that's kind of the limit of analytics at the moment and for the foreseeable future. Analytics is not going to take people who are failing and make them pass. It'll tell you why they're failing, but it won't make them pass. That's a really important distinction in my mind. Now, I think that the real future of analytics is not the dashboards that learning providers run. It's in what I call quantified self. What is quantified self? If I go for a bike ride, I take this with me. It tracks where I went, how fast I went, how far I went, what my speed is per kilometer, etc. Right? That motivates me to go faster. That tells me how I'm doing. That tracks my improvement. Personal quantified analytics of the self are probably going to be the thing that actually has the greatest impact on performance. Development, this is software development, application development, resource development is becoming less of a silo enterprise, less of a case where you have the computer people and the design people and the delivery people, and it's becoming much more integrated. Technologies like Slack, Airtable, Trello are creating these multidisciplinary content development teams, and these teams start up, do something on the fly, and then disband on an as-needed basis. It's kind of a chaotic work environment. You need the culture to make that work. You need the culture where people don't do the same thing for a year, 2 years, or whatever. That's a hard culture to sustain. And I think a lot of companies are going to have a lot of difficulty with it. My own government agency is trying, but having a lot of difficulty with it. Another thing, and I think this is really important, and I think this is my final note on this talk, open pedagogy. What I mean by that isn't just teachers doing in their class what they do openly and sharing, although it does mean that. It means me sharing my talk on a video or live or whatever, but it also means all of you in whatever job you're doing, whether it's truck driver, airline pilot, scuba diver, Antarctic explorer, whatever, sharing in real time the activities you undertake, the skills you deploy, the learning you did on the fly, what the results were. That's where our future content development will be. It's not going to be done in design houses and production houses. It's going to be done by a community of practitioners for that community of practitioners. And that is the kind of educational environment that we want to be designing for and working toward. I did a paper, a longest paper, it's about, 60 pages or so, that looks at some of these and goes beyond a lot of those. It talks about the nature of change as well as the nature of technology. That's available at that website there, bit.ly/quantum leaps. Somebody else picked the title. And that's me, and that's my website, and I thank you very much for your time eating into your lunch hour. I really appreciate it.